The second independent review of the Personal Independence Payment Assessment. Executive Summary. Overview of findings. Background. 1. The policy intent of Personal Independence Payment, PIP, was to introduce a more dynamic, fair, transparent and objective assessment compared with Disability Living Allowance, DLA, moving most people from indefinite to fixed-term awards. This was to be achieved through a functional assessment conducted by a health professional, with a significant majority of these assessments carried out face-to-face. 2. Alongside these policy aims was an aim to achieve greater fiscal sustainability by reducing projected working age expenditure to 2009-2010 levels in real terms, £11.8 billion. Spending on disability benefits has, though, continued to rise significantly even after the introduction of PIP. 3. The first PIP new claims were taken in April 2013, with the reassessment of all existing DLA claims originally set for completion by October 2017, although this timetable has now been extended by a year. 4. The Welfare Reform Act, 2012, mandated 2 independent reviews of PIP. The first of these reviews took place in 2014, against a backdrop of severe delays in the processing of claims. These issues were well understood at the time, and so the first review focused on taking an early view on how PIP was performing against the broader policy intent. 5. Progress against the recommendations in the first review has been mixed, with the implementation of recommendations either incomplete or slower than the review had hoped in many areas. A summary of progress against individual recommendations is at Annex A. 6. The delays in processing claims have now been resolved, and this second independent review provides an opportunity to re-examine the extent to which PIP is delivering the policy intent based on a much richer, though still incomplete, data set. The terms of reference provided a specific focus on further evidence, a key area for improvement identified in the first review. Many of the other themes explored in the first review have also continued to be highly relevant. In particular, the ongoing challenge of delivering a truly functional assessment and the importance of assessing the consistency of outcomes across the benefit. 7. This review started with a public call for evidence. Over 1,700 individuals and organisations responded, double the number from the first review. Engagement in any such exercise is, by definition, self-selecting, rather than representing a statistically valid sample. The responses have nonetheless provided valuable input to the review, with this evidence considered alongside extensive observations and inputs received from a wide range of stakeholders. This activity has included A. Roundtable discussions with Disability Benefits Consortium, B. Roundtable discussions with claimants, C. Roundtable discussions with DWP and assessment provider staff. D. Observations of DWP operations. E. Observation of initial claims call conducted by Serco. F. Observations of the independent audit team and audit teams in the assessment providers. G. Observations of paper-based and face-to-face assessments undertaken by both ATOS and Capita. H. Observations of appeal tribunals and discussions with regional tribunal judges. I. Roundtable with academics. J. Discussions with Manchester and Islington local authorities. K. Numerous meetings with senior DWP and assessment provider managers. L. Meetings with DWP and Scottish ministers. Further evidence. 8. A key part of the policy intent for PIP was to deliver a greater degree of objectivity and fairness by ensuring evidence-based decisions. This evidence can come from the claimant's own account through the assessment process, or take the form of reports from third parties, such as medical or social care professionals, known as further evidence. It is usual that some additional information or corroborative evidence of the claimant's functional impact is required to assess eligibility accurately. But the claimant's own account of the impact of their condition in the PIP2 claim form is a vital piece of evidence, the importance of which should not be overlooked. 9. The provision of further evidence is important, as it can help inform the assessment provider's initial consideration of needs and, in some cases, may enable a paper-based assessment and avoid the need for the claimant to undergo a face-to-face assessment. However, there are numerous challenges in effectively obtaining further evidence, faced both by individuals before they submit a claim and by assessment providers when they receive it. 10. Some claimants may readily have access to a substantial amount of relevant further evidence, as they have frequent contact with professionals or social care services. However, many others will have little, if any, relevant further evidence. This could be because they have little contact with the health or social care systems, meaning their evidence would not be recent, or that the evidence they have may be wholly medical in nature. Alternatively, it may be they do not have access to the evidence that may exist. 11. Gathering relevant further evidence is made harder by a continued widespread misperception that PIP is a medical rather than a functional assessment. This means that many claimants are unsure about what evidence they should supply. They may also seek medical evidence from their GP, which could include a financial cost, rather than more functional evidence from another professional, such as a community psychiatric nurse, which would more appropriately support their claim. 12. Health professionals can try to obtain further evidence, but the review has concluded from its observations that this is successful in relatively few cases. The main exception is where the potential is seen to carry out a paper-based assessment if the submitted evidence can be adequately enhanced or validated by some phone calls. Once it has been decided a face-to-face assessment is needed, even if further evidence in writing is requested, delays in obtaining it mean it may not arrive by the time of that assessment. 13. However, where it becomes apparent during the assessment itself that relevant further evidence is available which the claimant was unable to provide, health professionals should still take steps to obtain it. 14. Because the information provided to claimants about the provision of evidence is unclear, many claimants do not seek to supply further evidence to support their claim, as they may believe that the department will request evidence on their behalf. When this does not then happen, it can, unsurprisingly, undermine their confidence in the assessment system. 15. These various factors result in an inherent variability in what further evidence is available to support PIP claims. It is important to improve the quality of evidence gathered wherever possible, and to improve the clarity of how that is best achieved. Equally, however, there will be many cases where the reality is of little further evidence actually being available. It must therefore also be possible robustly to assess a claimant without any further evidence when it simply does not exist. 16. Taking into account these various factors, the review has concluded that A. The onus of responsibility for gathering further evidence, other than that already held by the department, should primarily sit with the claimant, as they are in the best position to supply what evidence is available, and because high levels of assessment provider evidence requests may well be largely ineffective, but resource-intensive. B. But before emphasizing where this onus rests, there should be a concerted effort to improve communications to explain the role of evidence and claimant responsibilities. 17. The review also found that some forms of evidence, particularly those from carers or family members, were not always given sufficient weight, with evidence from health professionals being considered more objective. The department should seek to ensure that the evidence of carers and family members is given due weight in the assessment process, while recognizing that all sources of evidence should be probed and tested. Claimant trust and transparency. 18. Given the controversy surrounding the introduction of PIP, it is no surprise that the fairness of PIP decisions has been the subject of some scepticism. Whilst claimants will not necessarily agree with decisions, it is vital that they understand the basis on which their entitlement has been decided. Claimants also expect to receive a certain standard of customer service in their interactions with departmental and provider staff, irrespective of the final outcome of their PIP award. There are opportunities throughout the claimant journey where practices could be improved to ensure that claimant confidence in the process and the fairness of awards is maximised. 19. Claimants have expressed a lack of confidence in the ability of health professionals accurately to record what has been said during face-to-face assessments. A lack of trust in the ability of health professionals to determine the impact of their condition was also frequently mentioned. This view is particularly prevalent when the health professional is not a specialist in their health condition. 20. The review considers that whether a health professional is a specialist in a particular health condition should not have an impact on their ability to conduct a functional assessment, providing adequate training is in place. However, given that this is a very real concern for claimants, the department and providers should do more to reassure claimants about the adequacy of training given to health professionals. Moreover, the department should prompt assessors to make clear where they have drawn on the specialist support available to them, such as mental health experts. 21. A more transparent assessment process would provide claimants with greater confidence in the fairness and openness of the assessment. The review considers the claimants should have routine access to their assessment report when they receive notification of the award decision. This should apply to both paper-based and face-to-face assessments. It would help claimants understand the basis on which their entitlement was determined and allow them to take a more informed decision about whether to dispute it. 22. In the longer term, transparency could be further increased by making audio recording the norm for face-to-face assessments. Introducing audio recordings should help increase claimant confidence in the conduct of such assessments, as well as addressing any complaints, providing greater protection both to claimants who experience a failure of service and to health professionals who may be subject to an inaccurate complaint. It can also be used by assessment providers to drive improvements in quality. The review considers it important that audio recording is offered on a default basis, but with an opt-out available to claimants. 23. Claimant trust issues persist at the dispute stage. Claimants express concern about the mandatory reconsideration process, in particular when relating this to the provision of further evidence, with many feeling that their decision was not looked at again in a sufficiently thorough way. Tribunal judges were also sceptical about the thoroughness of the mandatory reconsideration process. Furthermore, currently 65% of appeal hearings overturn the initial decision, which is clearly eroding the trust of claimants and stakeholders in the system. There are differing perceptions as to why so many appeals overturn initial decisions, which highlights the case for further research. 24. Improving this inherent mistrust is a challenging task and will require a significant swing in claimant perception. Increased transparency will help, but restoring claimant trust critically requires that the assessment process itself is of a demonstrably high quality that produces fair and consistent outcomes. Promoting quality and consistency. 25. The first review identified that measuring consistency between PIP cases is important to provide assurance that assessments are producing fair outcomes. 26. Achieving quality and consistency in a benefit on the scale of PIP and with its inherent complexity is challenging. These difficulties are amplified by the level of diversity in the PIP caseload. The assessment of needs must not be approached in a mechanistic way, but instead should explore the functional impairment of individuals through dynamic questioning that is tailored both to the situation and the person. 27. Following issues at the time of early rollout, the Department has taken a number of steps to improve quality, including a new set of audit criteria, an independent audit function, and stronger set of service credits. These actions are a welcome step in the right direction. Nevertheless, the review does have concerns about the robustness of the application of the audit criteria across the system. A further concern is that the audit process does not consider decision-making across all parts of the PIP process, but is focused too narrowly only on the report produced. 28. The review does not have the data available fully to understand the impact of the various external factors that might affect outcomes, or to demonstrate what level of variation might reasonably be expected in PIP. However, the data available on outcomes, when looked at in totality, does appear quite dispersed. This implies that the current distribution of outcomes may well fall outside the range of variability one might expect if the process was delivering acceptable levels of consistency, coupled with observations of inconsistency and the innate variability of claimant circumstance. This leads the review to recommend further action be taken to ensure greater consistency. 29. In assessing PIP, the review has identified 4 particularly significant sources of potential inconsistency. A. The amount of support claimants have in making their application and at the assessment. B. The amount of further evidence considered in any particular case. C. Differences in process between the two providers. D. Differences in the approach of individual assessors. 30. There is inevitably no one action or initiative that would wholly or even largely resolve the issues identified. Proactively understanding and addressing all potential sources of variation is at the heart of delivering a service which is fair, transparent, consistent, objective, and focused on those with the greatest need. 31. Based on the evidence available, there is a clear rationale for action in 4 broad areas. Greater focus in the assessment on functional impact. B. Providing sufficient time to consider the evidence base in the case before the assessment, allowing for follow-up inquiries after the assessment, and ensuring the write-up of the assessment is done in a timely manner. C. Broadening and deepening the audit approach and quality management to encompass more of the claimant journey, so quality is driven up throughout the process. It would also allow better understanding of the quality of the actual assessment, rather than relying on scrutinising the assessment report. D. Monitoring the consistency of outcomes through benchmarking and deep dive analysis, and using this insight to improve quality and consistency. 32. No framework alone can drive conditions for improvement in quality. With such a potentially contestable concept as quality, it is vital that the department and providers work constructively together. They must move beyond contractual constraints with a common purpose of improving the performance of the benefit. The review strongly encourages the management of both organisations to pursue this constructive approach. The future of personal independence payment. 33. The review has highlighted a number of challenges which the department should look to resolve at the earliest opportunity. Whilst this has been done, the department should also begin to make plans for PIP over the longer term. When doing this, the review recommends considering 3 key areas. A. Evaluating and improving PIP in the longer term. B. How PIP may be able to deliver better outcomes for claimants by supporting wider policy goals. C. Changes to delivery methods. 34. The first independent review of PIP emphasised the importance of a rigorous quantitative and qualitative evaluation strategy, with a scheduled plan for the publication of its findings. A start to this process has, albeit belatedly, now been made, with initial findings due to be published in spring 2017 and further evaluation to be published at a later date. This is vital that the department continues this research and ensures that its findings are made accessible to a wide range of both specialist and non-specialist audiences to improve transparency and public trust in the operation of the benefit. 35. The review concludes there are also some key areas concerning the operation of PIP which require additional scrutiny, but which are not due to be considered by the currently planned research. Consistency of outcomes, the mandatory reconsideration process, and award reviews. Focusing on these 3 areas, in addition to current research, will help the department maximise public trust in the operation of PIP. 36. The review recommends that the department considers whether, possibly in liaison with employers and others, more could be done to connect people with relevant support, advice or services if they claim PIP and are either in work or have the desire or potential to move into it. To do this effectively, it must be absolutely clear that this is not a back door to introduce conditionality into PIP. Claimants must also have absolute confidence that being in employment does not, in any way, disadvantage them in the assessment for PIP. The review has seen indications that this may not be universally the case at present. 37. Finally, building on the first review, this review reiterates that PIP would benefit significantly from a more integrated digital system and improved information sharing across the customer journey. This will take time, commitment and considerable joint working across central government, healthcare providers and local authorities. 38. To date, progress has been slow, with only a limited trial of a digital PIP2 form. A more advanced digital journey offers many opportunities to improve the collection of evidence, tailor claimant journeys. It would also provide a more joined-up process where handovers between the department and its various outsourced providers are managed behind the scenes, rather than being a prominent feature of the typical claimant experience. The review would encourage the department to accelerate the rollout of a digital claim form and in the longer term to deliver a modern customer experience through the development of a fully digitally enabled journey. By combining the ongoing improvement work with the recommendations of this review, PIP can begin more fully to fulfil its policy objectives in the long term: public confidence restored, fair and consistent outcomes for claimants, and fiscal sustainability. Recommendations. 1. That the department simplify and better coordinate communication products to provide a clear explanation of user responsibilities. This should include the use of digital media to provide claimants with real examples of what functional information they should submit as part of their claim. 2. That the department make clear that the responsibility to provide further evidence lies primarily with the claimant, and they should not assume the department will contact their health professionals. 3. That the department ensures that evidence of carers is given sufficient weight in the assessment. 4. That the transparency of decision-making is improved, with claimants being provided with the assessment report with their decision letter. In the longer term, offer audio recording of the assessment as the default, with the option for the claimant to opt out. 5. Assessments should begin with gathering a functional instead of a medical history. Options for confirming the medical history in advance of the assessment should be explored to ensure that the assessment has a more functional focus, and there is time to explore functional impacts in sufficient detail. 6. Health professionals to be given more time to consider the evidence provided with a claim before the assessment begins. 7. Assessment providers and the department to work to implement a system where evidence is followed up after the assessment, where useful evidence has been identified and may offer further relevant insight. A particular priority should be given to information that is likely to be functional in nature. 8. Write-up of reports to be completed directly after the assessment, except in exceptional circumstances. 9. Department to broaden the audit process to include the initial review stage and also explore how to include case manager activity in an end-to-end audit process. 10. Audit, assurance and quality improvement activity should be focused on the quality of the assessment as well as the quality of the report. This should be supported by audio recording of assessments and increased direct observations of assessments. 11. Department and providers to introduce consistency checks across a variety of metrics, including deep dives on cases with similar outcomes, as part of the regular management of the service. 12. Undertake and publish further research on the operation of PIP, in particular covering the consistency of outcomes, the effectiveness of award reviews, and the effectiveness of the mandatory reconsideration process. 13. In the longer term, develop a joined-up digital journey which includes an online facility for both claimants and external health professionals to upload documentary evidence securely. 14. To re-emphasise and ensure that employment will not disadvantage claimants when they seek to claim PIP, and explore ways in which PIP may be an enabler in improving employment retention. Annex B. Terms of Reference. Second Independent Review of the Personal Independence Payment. This review will provide the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions with an independent report evaluating the progress made on the PIP claims process as a result of the longer-term recommendations made in the first independent review of the PIP assessment, in particular looking at the use of IT and speed and effectiveness of the information gathering process during the assessment, looking at data sharing within the department and across government, including the way we share information gained from the PIP assessment with other organisations to improve health and care services, and how effectively further evidence is being used to assist the correct claim decision, exploring the balance between how much and the type of evidence we source and what we ask the claimant to provide, build on the recommendations and lessons learned from the first review using, where relevant, findings from the evaluation and full PIP rollout data.